Loading Innovation Markets platform.
Good evening, my fellow innovators. Hope everyone's having a lovely weekend, preparing for Christmas holidays, of course. Hopefully everyone's getting sufficient time off as well. You all deserve a break. We all do. But regardless of that, happy to say we are back for another cryptocurrency outlook. To be perfectly honest, nothing has really changed since the last breakdown we've done. However, as promised, we're going to keep these going regardless, even if the market doesn't move. We said the same thing to the members as well. We actually, probably for the first time ever, didn't give an update on Friday because we have just been completely stagnant, and overall our projections have not yet come through because price is currently range bound. So we've done an update over an hour long for the members today as well, just to ensure everyone still knows the overall goal and the overall agenda. Now, what we have here is a little bit different to normal. I've got a 4-screen setup at the moment, not necessarily 4 screens, but 4 charts. You do not need, just to throw that out there, you see a lot of these things on Instagram regarding, 17 screens, a plasma TV in the background playing Bloomberg. No, you just need 1 screen or a laptop or even your phone in the best case scenario. And what we've got here though for this particular setup, it allows me to move and flow with the market easier by having BTC in the top left, XRP on the top right, bottom left we have Ethereum, and bottom right we have LTC. All 4 of these are currently on the 4-hour time frame. Now, one thing I continuously try to say as well is, despite the fact I cover like 50 plus different coins, the brutal truth is, when it comes to understanding the cryptocurrency market, as long as you can see what these 4 are doing, you're going to have a very good understanding on what is likely going to happen next in the market. And that is thanks to the BTC dominance still being relatively in control of the entire market. Now, if we do go over to the BTC dominance at this present point in time, we can see it's stuck at the 40% level. And despite this being the current situation, BTC still controls most of the market. Even if you see a few altcoins, for example, going higher or going on an individual pump or dump, overall, these significant movements are stemming from whatever BTC is doing. So again, as we covered in the last one, I believe as well, many people are seeing this as a possibility for what could arguably be a huge alt season being triggered upon the BTC dominance breaking lower. However, for myself personally, this doesn't really look too bearish at the moment, and I'm not really seeing maybe what other people are seeing, because from an absolute top perspective on a monthly time frame, I'm just going to clear this off for a second. Price is currently in a range. Overall, it's range bound, and if anything, I can actually get rid of this as well and just mark this out with a slightly clearer rectangle tool, just to make a bit more sense of what I'm currently looking at here. So if I mark this out, we're going to change this to a level of interest, and we are also going to block off this range with a new tool. So we'll do this, we will make it a key level. And what you can currently see ongoing in the market is, even if you disregard this and push this a bit higher, prices come into an overall larger range. And when you look at this from a zoomed out perspective on the monthly, if I get rid of the trend line for a second to keep this as simplistic as possible, the BTC dominance overall to me looks like it could be preparing to bounce from range to range. And within this overall larger range, there's a minuscule range currently ongoing. And until we do see that BTC dominance actually start breaching below, for example, 35%, I do not see much of a altcoin influence at the moment in terms of, an alt season. But what I am currently looking at is, within this range, there are some additional levels that are of significant interest, and more noticeably within this BTC dominance range, we can see around the 50% mark and the 60% mark. So it's essentially moving in stages. So if we consider that we go from 70, 60, 50 and 40, these are the overall 2 key levels within this range. And as we can see, we've broken into a range, we've come back down and filled the bottom, and we've broken back up, retested and continued up to the 70% territory, rejecting this level to confirm a level of resistance where we have now trickled back down to the bottom. So in theory, this can be extended to around 37 or 35%, but I like this level because of the downside break, the rejection, which then led to returning back up to this level. So in theory, when you then zoom into the BTC dominance, you can see on a monthly perspective, it's currently just playing around within this area, and this can be considered somewhat of an extension where price may be dipping into almost to gain liquidity if it was a USD pairing example. And at the moment, on a monthly perspective, 12 days left and 6 hours, a lot can happen in the space of almost 2 weeks. And what I mean by that is just because it's coming into a certain level, the same way price came back into this level but didn't continue up to 100%, same as over here, just because it's at a level with a bit of strength and it has been continuing in a trend, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to break. And this is why I prefer the higher time frames, because once you go over to the weekly as well, you can see here, huge level of interest, price broke out, retested, it's now coming into retest. And in this particular moment in time, this is why I prefer the weekly. The 4 hour is a massive downtrend. You know, you've got an uptrend going down, uptrend going down. So naturally, in a similar sequence as well, I would probably be expecting something like this to be unfolding once more. And the best way just to quickly illustrate that is just to show a kind of pattern on how this is currently moving. And this can even be considered a bigger version of that as well. And what we would do for the uptrends is just quickly adjust this first and foremost, and then just change the color just to kind of indicate what I'm getting to here. So actually we will do the bullish ones as blue, and this can just be tweaked ever so slightly as well. We'll leave that there for now, and we will make the upward ones green, and then these can just be pink very quickly. I like to show visualizations of what I see just to kind of put things into perspective. And then if we obviously duplicate this over to here, considering we are currently rejecting a relatively strong level, you can kind of imagine what I'm getting to here. And we can see a current trend of upwards movement followed by a downwards movement. Same again, coming back down into almost the exact same region. So what we could hopefully be expecting from this point in time is a significant growth in the BTC dominance. And if I do now start clearing these off, it becomes a little bit easier to understand this, because if you go back to the daily time frame, you can see how overall, when you look at it from the daily in comparison to the monthly, on the monthly and weekly, this level is holding perfectly. We can see some pushes down here as well, which can be factored in, but this is why the monthly is absolutely crucial, because you can see where the overall end of month plays are closing. Now, despite this monthly candle closing below this support, now retesting as resistance, overall, it's still within the proximity of this wicks. So I know that can seem a bit over the top for a BTC dominance analysis, but for me personally, if we can understand what this is doing, then it can give us a pretty good clue on where BTC may be bringing the rest of the market next, which naturally brings us into understanding what the BTC USD pair is going to do next. Because if then BTC starts making a move and we can identify that move, the dominance is going to tell us that it will have a significant influence over the remainder of the market as well. So let's jump into BTC first. Now overall, if we just go back to this chart quickly as well, and we just quickly look at the 4 hours in comparison to one another, we can mark these all off in a very similar way. The only real difference is Ethereum is moving a bit irregular to some of the others. But if you just look at this in a very similar way, from there, we can also mark this out from around there quickly just for visualization purposes. 4 hour over here is currently moving downwards in a very similar way to the BTC dominance, in fact, if you want to use that as a comparison. Now, what I currently see here is number one, head and shoulders. Very simple stuff. I know a lot of people say, oh, you always focus on the head and shoulders, but in crypto, it's always occurring. So it's very important to factor in absolutely everything you can find to give yourself a bit of a clue. So XRP over here is showing that potential head and shoulders formation. BTC is progressively trending downwards at the moment. And as we can see, there's a very steady, slow decline to the downside, where we can see a movement down. Lower lows and lower highs are being created in the process, and naturally within this process of going down, counter trends are being broken as well. As we can see, we are having very small rallies to the upside. And one thing I've been telling the members to kind of understand in particular here is, number one, this is also doing the same, lower lows, lower highs. But if we do enlarge the BTC chart and just understand here, if we get rid of some of the main things we've been looking at, get rid of this as well, and just understand right now it's swinging up, going down, coming into retest, going down, retesting again, going down, coming up, and progressively shifting the layers lower. Almost like a set of stairs, we are just continuously going down the stairs at the moment. Of course, the biggest concern here is this crash, and I do not think this level is going to hold. I think we are going to wipe out. And my overall BTC target, now that we're basically there, is the 40k region. So once we have returned to the 40k region, which I covered from up here with the members when we originally called the initial 60k break and reversal from this territory over here, we have been expecting these levels we're currently at, and even a little bit lower, since around the 15th of November. And as you guys would have seen on the community post as well, which we will get into shortly, is Cadena as another good example. And now we're slowly seeing these downside targets being checked off. It's making me a lot more confident that before we see any form of potential upside movement, I feel there needs to be another series of liquidations coming into play first. And the daily puts this into perspective perfectly, because after we have seen such a significant crash, 60k, everyone was getting excited, everyone's, it breaks and retests, let's buy guys, this is going to the moon. Well, where's that moon now? And we can argue that this is still a bull run, but in theory, this is not moving like a bull run we have ever seen before. So we cannot actually confirm right now if this is a bull market or bear market. And this is also what I said when we were here, because despite this potentially breaking those highs, it doesn't mean we are still in a bullish market. And a lot of this can roll around in a second. I personally believe before we do see these upsides to the levels that I am expecting upon a reversal back to the upside, of course, that is, we need to go down first. And at the moment, now that we are approaching our final target of 40k, considering this has been called from the top, I would expect this to hopefully be fulfilled. And then we can kind of continue in line with the overall projections. Now, there's some crucial levels in play as well. And the most important thing for me is simply this wick. As we cover, there's going to be a huge level of liquidations, again, accumulating around this wick within this area and below, where of course we want to see this low taken out to then trigger much larger upside movements to follow. Naturally, with a wick this large, number one, something caused price to reverse exactly from $42,000, which barely even broke the 42k level. If we put a horizontal ray there, it just went under $42,000. Now, you have to understand, if price is crashing from a relatively higher level, hitting a level precisely and going back to the upside, there is clearly an accumulation of buy orders waiting here for this to happen. And again, this is further proof of market manipulation, because if price can fall this fast and this high, hit a particular level and bounce back up, that tells me there are premeditated buy orders set particularly at that $42,000 region. Factoring in a little bit of slippage, there's clearly a lot of buying momentum here. So it's early signs already. There could be a reversal coming into play, but that doesn't mean before this reversal comes into play, we will not dip down first, filling in some crucial territory. There are some lows to be taken out. There is some resistance or support turn resistance, resistance turn support that needs to be progressed along the way. But overall, the crucial part for me is the resistance levels over here that have turned into support. So we need to be careful here, because not only have we seen this manipulation, wicks give you, if you've seen the crypto course lessons we've made for you all, you'll be able to understand this further. But with such a large wick to the downside, you very rarely get an immediate reversal. A lot of people will talk conventional methods. And if you're especially in the Forex market, you would have likely been watching a lot of your original research if you've only just started on websites like Baby Pips. Now, you need to remember, the majority of people are losing in this market, which is the brutal honest fact. We always tell people this in complete transparency. You have to realize the majority of people are in the majority of losers, which also means the majority of people must be doing the same thing, which also tells me the majority of people are learning the same techniques and the same methods, principles, analysis, strategies, whatever that may be. And one of those most common ones for me is wicks being huge signs of reversals. For me, everything is over a certain period of time. I don't like to jump into things. I don't like to rush into things. Even if we see a bit of upside beforehand, this wick tells me there's a lot of room down to fall, as we've seen historically. You always get this. You get the push down, you get the push up. It consolidates a bit and then it takes out that low. This happened over here numerous times around $30,000. It's happened here even after a large push. That wick always comes in to get filled. This wick over here filled, wick over here filled. History tends to repeat itself time and time again. We had a pullback here, retested, took out the low, then we proceeded. So in my opinion, before this needs to be taken out. Whether or not it pushes higher first, we do have a sell limit in place. Of course, the members know what that is. for XRP in particular, where if we do for whatever miraculous reason get an upside push, I'll take off a bit more profit if it pushes up and then reinvest that further down the bottom. As we told you guys as well, there is 100 to 150k on standby for XRP in particular, but I simply need to see some lows taken out first. What this also tells me is following this huge bearish movement, you can barely see any bullish activity in the market at present. I mean, where are these buyers? Price is crashing, but there is no real upside momentum continuously. With every support floor we have, price breaks through. We haven't even retested here yet. After breaking out of the 62k region, we push down into this level, 60k precisely pretty much. Haven't retested properly, but we hit once, pulled back, retested, and as you can see, the wall is continuously getting lower, but the rejections and reversals to these walls are almost non-existent at present. In theory, the most logical level here is $56,000, where we've seen numerous retests. Price has not even come back here yet. So the overall momentum, despite everyone telling you it's a bull run, the overall current trend is very clearly bearish. And at this point in time, what we are expecting, potentially even by the end of the day, for the weekly candle closure, is seeing price start to break out of this structure. And I feel with the amount of people trapped in this market, I know I've just rambled on a bit there, but what I was trying to build up to was basically saying that BTC in particular will spike down, pull back up, lower, 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 lower. No one is battling right now. Now what this tells me is the bulls are clearly applying pressure because the overall strength is bearish. However, whilst they are slowly but surely managing to regain some ground, the bears are pushing them lower with every single attempt. And frequently we are barely even able to get double retests of particular swing highs. Even over here, whilst we did have some bigger swings, they were doing the exact same thing as they done over here. And if you look at the current trend, it looks to me it's quite apparent there's quite an elevated risk at the moment of crash, consolidate down, crash again, kind of this situation here, and then consolidate as it's currently doing now, and then potentially crash again. Now that same movement alone actually takes it back to 36, which I'm not going to disregard, but for now, as long as I hit my 40k target, I'm more than happy. And because we've been expecting this for over a month now, and it's finally coming closer, I'm getting pretty excited. And this is why I've done pretty much nothing the entire time whilst waiting for this. I haven't sold more yet, I haven't bought more yet, because I have these goals in mind, and whether or not these all-time highs get broken, honestly, I couldn't care less. It just, again, it just kind of proves what's going on here. Now, from a weekly perspective, this is what's interesting, because we obviously need to wait for the weekly candle closures, but at the moment, you know, if you see a closure below this wick in particular, you can start expecting this to happen. And even over here on the weekly, this showcases it further as well. Almost an identical mirror of price action. Bearish candle, indecision, took it out, then proceeded higher. So even if in whatever dream or delusional or magical world where someone pumps this market above the all-time highs, which I'm not really seeing as a good possibility at the moment, I do feel these buyers need to be wiped out. I'm seeing far too much euphoria and optimism again. Fear and greed index is still in a fearful stage. However, putting two and two together, I would arguably say that at the moment there's still a lot of bullish people, especially Twitter. You guys know that is my on-chain analysis in itself in a way, because I just like to analyze people, occasionally even trigger people because it's funny and it really shows you how emotionally invested people are, which is absolutely crucial to me, because the more you see people emotionally reacting to a particular investment, you know, if I say Bitcoin is going to go to $20,000, people have a heart attack, they go crazy, because not because they don't think it's possible, maybe deep down they're scared it could happen, but you need to know who's emotionally invested in this market in a simple sense. And the more emotional people are, the more you know emotions are at an all-time high, which also means there's a bigger possibility that the deluded people will first be wiped out. And this is why I don't like to take my chances. If I get the final confirmation, 100 to 150k goes back in. But at this present point in time, before we see kind of what could be occurring here, also in a very simple manner, if this does start pulling back, let's just say it comes into these areas, these Fibonacci start closely aligning with what I've been telling you guys overall, is that again, coming up to these highs means nothing, and it doesn't mean it cannot come back down to the lows. The precision of this single Fibonacci alone, just theoretically placing it around these levels, still aligns around that prior all-time high of $20,000, which naturally I think upon a final movement back to the upside, we are probably going to start gearing up now to head into a relatively bearish 2022. Again, I don't like timelines, but from what we can currently see, the market is now slowly slowing down. We have hit a major hurdle from a longer term perspective. And again, as I covered, this was almost your second opportunity to take profits. I did say this, I think even in the video, in theory, when I think it was the We Were Wrong video, I believe I did cover, if not, it was covered on social media as well, that this is your second blessing. The market has essentially given you that blessing to consider taking some profit off the table. And if you've opted to be greedy, which I'm going to be completely honest, I don't care what people say about this, it is greedy. If you have not taken profits, even anything, at these sorts of levels, then you are truly riding on hope. Because as we've covered, if there's no historical price action, you are purely playing a gambling game here. You need to understand you are investing in a very early technology, currently under a lot of regulatory pressure, a lot of bank and government pressure, under a huge amount of leverage. This is far greater in terms of leverage than we've seen in any other market in this time frame. Even in the prior bull run, that was predominantly Tether. Now we've got Tether, and a severe amount of leverage piling up, futures, ETFs, all of this stuff. It's just, there's a lot going on right now, and we need to consider this. And I'm just a bit scared, to be honest with you. Again, not for myself, because I'm prepared for this. This is why profits get taken out. But for the majority of people, I also think I said this in the last video, I just feel like if they crash this market below this level, there's nothing below 30,000 until 20,000, by the way. And we also know overall this could very easily go back to where I expect of 6K. But if such a situation is to happen, we are going to see one of the most catastrophic losses in financial markets in quite some time. And we naturally can expect then the SEC to step in and start, maybe the FCA in the UK as well. We can naturally start expecting an increase in regulatory oversight as well. So all of this pieced together, looking at how everything's unfolding at the moment. I mean, let's go over to XRP, enlarge this very quickly. We can see overall a very similar situation is occurring. Go over to the daily time frame, this wick over here, it does the same thing. It brings in buyers, and I just heavily feel this is the exact same scenario. People see a huge wick and a reversal, goes up, of course they start buying because they're thinking, well, perfect, that is a reversal sign. If I've ever seen one, let's start buying. And then those stop losses below the wick, just within this region. So you've essentially, if you look at the wicks in this way, they are essentially a huge floor of liquidity, which may need to be grabbed. And I fear this current curvature that looks like it's about to break to the upside could be met with an incredibly swift downside that sees this absolutely just fill in that wick at the bare minimum. And then we may see that continuation. But also, another concern just to throw out is the fact that at 50 cents, there's not much below that either. There's just room down. And regardless, you guys know where I think this is going. And once we have seen a potential dip down and a reversal back up, I believe moving into next year, we will start seeing XRP back at 20 to 10 cents, which still remains the same goal, hasn't changed in the slightest. And hopefully now, I hope everyone can see this at the bare minimum, that when we were saying this over here, or when we were saying this even there, there's a reason why we were saying it. You know, we're not trying to scare people. It's not FUD. If anything, it's us trying to protect you guys from all of the dangerous stuff that's being kind of regurgitated from one blind person to the other, that's getting you to buy at any given price. It just doesn't seem like there's that momentum right now. And too many people are expecting the XRP, you know, the lawsuit settlement. They've got insiders apparently, but all of these insiders, and yet no one can seem to predict a single outcome. And people are still buying dips that they think are up here. So please try to avoid people that are claiming they know when the lawsuit's going to end, or they're saying it's going to reach 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. It's all a fugazi speculation. We need to just move with the market and participate when those correct prices arrive, which is why there's buy orders set upon an upside movement, and I mean there's buy orders set upon a downside movement, and why there's sell limits set upon an upside movement. I would not want buy orders upon an upside movement. But also the wicks here is something interesting as well on XRP. I mean, you've got the wick over here, and you've also got the upside wick over here. So price essentially, no matter where it closes, as long as it closes below this wick over here, or within this region over here, the overall momentum remains to the downside, because these are all crucial levels in confluence with one another. Very simple, broken support, term resistance, broke through, rejected, has technically rejected. So if the momentum does remain as it is now, in very simple terms, if we fail to break above this particular level here of around 85 cents, when I say break, don't jump the gun. When I say don't jump the gun, what I mean is the same as BTC. Because I play a longer term game here, I know eventually it will come back down, regardless of whether it goes against me in the short term. I don't care about the short term, I care about the long term. And what I'm trying to get to here is like here, where we broke through. It doesn't mean over the long term, this is not creating a bigger reversal sign. So when we go back to XRP, it is rather identical. And in a way, you just want to be careful right now with how this momentum's currently going. Over the long term, it doesn't lead to the same outcome. And at present, it does look to be the case. If you go over to the daily as well, like I just said, if this level does not break, if it goes up and then closes back down below, that's a massive reversal sign. Whereas if it obviously starts ripping through slowly, we know we can adjust. But at the moment, don't think about it breaking through on a 1 hour candle and going, oh my God, this is confirmation. No, you must wait for the dailies, the weeklies, and even the monthlies for the most clarity. Because everything within the space of that month is essentially manipulation. It's only once that monthly candle closes, we have true clarity on what will happen next. And even right now, it's not even 85 cents. It's literally 84, 83 that's currently holding around this level. So again, the concern here is, was this last wick up just a little liquidation before this potentially fills in that area down there? 4 hour wise, doesn't look very nice, doesn't look good. All we are seeing is rejections. And again, where is that upside push? The upsides are only really coming after price has made a new move lower. Over here, we have created a little support floor. Granted, this little range over here, but that just tells me there's a lot of buys obviously stopping the selling momentum, but there's also stop losses all the way down here as well. So once it dips into this pool again, if it does, it's not going to be a very good outcome. So we need to consider every single possibility. Now, if we go over to the higher time frames first, just quickly have a look at the daily and weekly over here. Simple stuff on this one. I mean, $3,000 easy if we see a crash down. Overall, this has done a similar thing to BTC as well. We've just taken out the high. We've literally teased people into a high being taken out. We're now rejecting this level of resistance and we're dipping down. There's no real space from these levels down back to around 2.6k to 3k. So if you look at this overall trend as well, just think of the bigger picture. If you do truly believe it is going to absolutely fly to the moon and go to $100 million in the next 24 hours, like some people are probably saying on Twitter or YouTube, just think of the longer term plays first. Very simple. There's a trend line, 1 touch, 2 touch. If it wants to go much higher, at least you know there's a third outstanding retest there. So in theory, that's all you really need to wait for on this one. And it looks pretty possible right now. So daily wise as well, this is a clear structure of just breaking. There is no momentum. Rejected there, pushed up, held as support, failed to break. Now, why did this break lower? Because number one, there's a very large wick to the downside. What do we see over here? Large wick to the downside, dips in, maybe it comes back in, takes out that high. That would be around there. Will it come through? Probably not right now, but what you can see is it outstanded, it drove in the buyers, everyone gets excited. Goodbye, let's go. Over here, what could we maybe see? Goodbye, let's go. Will it return back to all-time highs after that? I don't think so, but it could come into a nice level of interest. I've got marked out to the members, and from there we see something quite drastic shift into play. It does feel at the moment as well, I've seen a lot of stuff regarding BTC, so a lot of people have been talking as well about BTC being decentralized, all these kind of myths and stuff we see. But only the other day the CIA have come out and kind of confirmed they're building a lot of projects on blockchain technology. And I was kind of just thinking the other day, well, what true value is BTC going to have once all of the 21 million BTC has been mined? Now that we're moving on to the layer 2 protocol, by the way, a lot of the surveillance is ongoing on the Lightning Network. And if you guys have read my BTC and Tether document, you would know exactly what I was saying months ago is now unfolding. And if you're in my personal Telegram group as well, you would have seen this from where I literally said all of these on-chain metrics that we currently see on BTC, You know, if I go onto Glassnode and I start looking at the on-chain metrics, everyone goes, oh my God, that's so cool. You can see the on-chain stuff. This is groundbreaking. But no, what this is basically a beta test where we are the beta testers for this technology that the government will be using on you. What do you think they're going to have access to when they introduce CBDCs and start using distributed ledger technology to handle all transactions and payments? The difference is it will be a centralized blockchain that the banks and governments will control. And if you consider the fact that BTC won't have much use, I know people say, oh, when the 21 million is all mined, it's going to be rare, store of wealth, blah, blah, blah. But in theory, BTC's there won't be much of an incentive for miners first and foremost, which is why they will need to transition to the Lightning Network protocol almost full time. And what that means is BTC will then shift to a fee-based system. I wrote about this in the BTC Tether document. And if BTC is going to survive in any way, shape or form after what may be a next catastrophic crisis, you also need to consider the only way it will physically survive is if they adopt the Lightning Network protocol and they start charging a fee-based system. Now, does that remind you of anything whatsoever? Because for me, it reminds me of the current prehistoric in fact, banking system that BTC was intended to defeat. So if you do not already think the government's banks and all of these larger players that we are meant to be against do not have the most significant role in BTC, you are completely wrong. And what I'm trying to get to here is we need to understand, in a catastrophic event, how do we know this will survive? The only way it can survive is if it becomes another government asset, which is a fee-based system. So all they're essentially doing is converting the old system they already thrive on and just simply shifting the same model onto a digital blockchain. It's almost exactly the same. Granted, payments are already digital or digitalized and tokenized or whatever may be. Once we shift over to this particular model, it purely plays back into the hands of the bankers and the elite again anyway. So my concern is before all of this happens, there may be a massive shakeout as well. And if LTC is exactly the same as well, we're not going to break this one down too much because identical price action, huge manipulation. Overall, I do think these are going to roll over. But if we quickly go over to Cadena, now this is something we called out to the members as well on the 15th of November. And this just sets out as a little reminder. So we gave this when it was around $20 on the 15th of November, around here, maybe even a bit higher at that point in time. And we said we were expecting around $7 with this zone marked out to $6. So the $7 to $6 range. Now, the reason I'm showing this is because number one, it's given me a pretty good clue on what could be happening next on the rest of the market. Number two, it again is another example of what we've been telling you guys about not rushing. Everyone we spoke to was trying to buy this. They were trying to buy Solana, then Sand, and everyone starts going crazy on all these other coins. We simply just said to the members, just don't get involved. Wait for a pullback. And what we're trying to get to here is, we put this on the community post as well, just don't buy. If you've missed the move, just be man enough or man up. Have that testicular fortitude to just admit you've missed out and it's not a profitable opportunity anymore. There's no point buying a coin at $20 when its all-time high is essentially at $20 just for the sake of gambling and hoping it will go higher. Even now, this is not cheap enough for me to be investing in. But what I'm trying to get to here is, even if you didn't invest and capture this move that we gave and bought the dip, you've actually saved money by not being involved at all. Whereas if you FOMO'd in at $20 expecting multi-millions from this as well, you would be in a rather worse situation now. And what we're trying to get to is, now that this is all slowly unfolding, everything we've been saying over the past few months kind of unfolds into a reality, let's just say. And this is just a good example that sometimes the best investment is making none whatsoever. And if we go over to DOT, this is another good situation we saw. Broke out from the highs. We wanted this to come all the way back down. And personally, I could even see this dipping just below that 20 region as well, that $20 region over there. If you go over to Solana, the exact same thing applies. This is working flawlessly in line with my expectations. I can probably see this just dipping into that $130 region, to be honest with you. And of course, once this occurs, after we see another potential pullback, what could kind of be happening on this one at the moment, I feel, is if it does maintain this level, it may dip in a bit lower, pull back again, and then this could easily just start dying below $40. To be honest with you, again, no floor below here. You want to be very careful of that, because this is basically the Mariana Trench, leading us into the depths of a sub $50 Solana. Uni, another similar situation. Massive major overall trend is broken. Just to give you a bit of an inclination, you know, this may go for the final dip, as the others have done as well. Overall, I'm expecting Uni. Again, I don't really like these coins. I don't hold any. I don't want to invest in them. They don't interest me. But covering them is always good, because I know a few of you do. If this takes out this floor, which is arguably the only real floor left at the moment, there's no real room down until $8 again, where we've seen the historical price action. So these kind of coins in particular, I know people may be buying here, but I am just cautious. Still not, number one, it's not a good enough price here. Decent price down here. If this goes back to the bottom, like I expect all of them to do eventually, then you're pretty well set up. But at the moment here, it's a bit risky to be considering buying, even though the short-term movement, you've got a simple game plan on this one. I mean, you're simply looking around where this level crosses over, which does take us into next year, but I wouldn't say that's a bad thing, to be honest with you. I think if this can push down first, whip up into this level, you'll see the final movements coming in potentially by the end of next year, if not the middle of next year. So it is holding, but again, this wick maybe just needs to be filled ever so slightly, not the straight move down first. I think it will build up. And what that potentially means is we may have a relatively horrific end to 2022, basically. And then we may get that optimism and what could potentially be a bull trap going into the starting phases of 2022. But also remember, 2022, we are expecting, as we covered in the last video, potential lockdowns as well that could be commencing after Christmas. Once they've blamed us for being together, they'll probably put a lot of countries back into lockdown. So we saw what happened in March 2020 with COVID. So in essence, you need to just realize it may not work out as we think in terms of alt season and all this stuff as well, because externally what is going on is rather concerning, and we've seen how crypto performed against this before. So all we can do is make our best predictions and compare what we've seen happen historically. So again, everything we present to you guys is logical, it's factual, it's based by either historical price action, not guessing that we're going to go to the moon, but everything is provided here with rational reasoning. So you just have to remember, it's not FUD. At the moment, it's all working out very well in terms of what's been expected. And yeah, we just need to play the patient game here, guys. I've said this to everyone, members or public. Right now, patience is key. And my best intentions here is to make sure everyone's protected and not get burnt going into Christmas, ruining their holidays, ruining their new year. I would rather no one really participates in the market right now unless something much more drastic comes in to the downside. Because at least that way you're not going into 2022 pissed off and miserable. At least you're going in neutral with a clear head, and whatever the market presents to us from this point onwards, once these potential ranges are broken, you'll be a bit more level-headed, you'll have more clarity. It will just be easier to actually jump into the market once something else has happened. What I believe will happen is when we do see this short-term retracement that I believe will lead down to much worse lows across the whole market, I think a lot of people are then going to get optimistic again, bullish, you know, the bull runs back on. But until we see crucial levels broken, you know, unless something like Uni goes back above $28, $30, there's no bull run on the cards for me right now. This is progressively going lower, and it does concern me that people cannot really see that in the present moment. But until next week, guys, we're going to hopefully see a much more improved end of the year kind of fiasco in crypto. We do always get a bit of excitement historically near the end of the year. So hopefully over the next 2 weeks or so, more's going to happen. We can have more to update on, but at the moment, all going to plan. So let's see what happens next.